All right, I'm gonna start working on the taking the crankcase off. I don't think there's anything else I need to do. When I'm taking it off, I'm not gonna go in any particular order. And it says in the Yanmar service manual and stuff, you don't need to remove anything like the oil filter and all that stuff if you don't have to. Like unless that's part of what you're repairing. Same thing with this oil pump cover. So I'm not gonna touch any of that stuff. All right, I got all the bolts out. So my next thing, like I said, is I don't have the special tool they recommend. So I'm gonna go get some grease and coat that. All right, whether putting that grease on did anything, I don't know. I guess I'm gonna tap this with a mallet, see if it kind of breaks free. It looks like they put some tabs on here, like 3 pry points. There's a little circle here, here, and down here. I'm assuming that those are to pry. There's another bolt actually right here. I don't know if that's holding this on. It says that that's for the stiffener bolt. I don't think that attaches to anything. It's more or less like a stud that comes out and it goes into the block to give it an extra little bit so this doesn't vibrate. I don't think it's attached to anything. So it should still come off without it. It doesn't say anything about taking that off. I did end up taking the stiffener bolt off and it does look like it was holding it on, even though it doesn't say anything about it in there. It should go easier. I'm glad I didn't beat on it. Oh yeah. I'll do my best to observe what's going on in here. There's stuff attached to this crankcase, so I don't know. Very cool. The inside is pretty clean. See this gasket? Probably could got away with reusing this gasket, to be completely honest, but I have the replacement. I'm gonna put it to this old one to the side. Cool. All right, and then I'm very happy when I ran this motor before I realized it. Here's that broken piece. I have to clean off. You can see where the pieces broke off right there. There's a pin right there. And there's also a pin on the outside. Nice and smooth. So I'll figure out how to take this apart now. All right, took some time to clean up the oil mess and all that. And next part is going to be there's pins that hold this together. I'm going to try doing it from the outside one. I put a clamp on it to hold it from rotating. And at least on this motor, the pin appears to be thinner on this side than it is on this side. So I'm assuming it only drives out one way. All right, I got the new one right here, and it's kind of showing the same thing. That pin's just not pushed in all the way. So I'm hoping, give me a little insight if I take this one apart. What it does, it's a tapered pin. Maybe what I'll do is get like a bigger punch to get it flush and then use a smaller one. Okay, got it out. Cool. Little centerpiece. I'm just going to tap on that lightly because there is a seal and some bearings and stuff. So. See now. Here's the little, looks like a plastic-ish seal. Try to remember which side is the clean one when it goes back together. There's a washer on here as well. So on the new one, there are some needle bearings in there as well. So be real careful. I don't know if those are held together or just sitting in place. So just be cognizant of that. Okay, so I'll put this washer back on. Feeling really dumb here. I can't quite figure out. I mean, I know where it goes, but I can't quite figure out here. All right, it looks like for this thing to go in, this has got to come out. This is the camshaft. I noticed, if you see that on the crankshaft, there's 2 marks, and then there's one tooth with 1 mark. That's your timing mark, so you can line it up. So I don't know if you can see it, but maybe a little bit from this angle. bad lighting, but you have your little like exhaust valve tappets. So it looks like you need to like maybe hold the exhaust tappets up and then the camshaft will pull out. Well, I'm wrapping up for the day. Went and did some reading while I ate my dinner. And what I'm gonna have to do is take this valve bonnet off and remove the valve tappets and the rocker arm and stuff. So I went in the technical manual and printed it off. Work package 0083. It's gonna tell me how to do that. So that way I can get everything put back together. And hopefully tomorrow when I pick up with this, I'll have everything together and be able to start it. All right, gonna pick up where I left off yesterday and take this valve cover bonnet off and start getting the valves out. Remove the little rubber plug. If you're watching this video and you're looking at just how to do the work on the motor, yours might not necessarily have that. Some of them, they just put like a semi-permanent rubber plug in. I don't have a new gasket to put on, so I'm just gonna reuse this one. The 2 bolts you just saw me take off. Eventually, if I find the part that I need, then I'll replace it if it leaks. All right, so I got it off and I'm not really sure. What I'm gonna go for is loosening these lock nuts and then just bringing these way up so it takes pressure off these, which go down to the valves. All right, so I had my camera set up and I guess I didn't touch the recording button, so I didn't record what I did, so I'm gonna talk through it. I loosened those lock nuts and I brought this all the way up. And then in the previous clip, you can see there was little rods. I laid everything out in the exact order that I took it off. These are what I pulled out of here. I don't know how well the camera is going to be able to see, but that goes down in and hits the valves. These little things there, those go on top of the spring area there. I did it to get a little extra room to work with. Once I did that, I took a little pick, and in from here on each side, I slowly moved the valves up enough so that way it was enough for me to be able to pull the cam out. I pulled it out and held the valves up at the same time, got the camshaft out of the way, and then I laid these out in the order that they're in there. So this one is the deep one that's farther in. This is the one closer to the crankcase. These need to go in exactly the same. I'm actually going to label them so that way I know. Like for example, I'm just going to go up here and put like a little 1 and a 2, and then this will be 2, 1, 2, 1. Now that the camshaft's out, this should all go together very easy. At least I hope. I'm surprised at how loose that is, but the other one was like that too, and it wasn't leaking any oil or anything. Okay, so I guess now to go in reverse and put all this back together. At the top of the valve tappets, there's probably not going to be nearly enough lighting to get in there. Anyway, at the top of the stems off the valve tappets, see how this is rounded at the bottom? Those fit in there. You need to make sure that they're in there. Then to hold it in place, once you get it in, you could just, these little adjustment screws are like little balls at the bottom too. Similar idea to this. Rest them in there so it holds it in place even though the valve lashing or spacing or whatever you want to call it is way off right now. Place these little guys back on. We're going to adjust the for the proper clearance, okay? And like I said earlier, it's 0.006, so you need a feeler gauge for it. And before you do that, here underneath that circle, there's a little V-notch in one of the fins. Right here, a little V-notch in the fins lines up with, there's a T mark right here. That's for top dead center. Do the spacing with that. All right, now that I got it in, Like I said earlier, 0.006 is what you're going to adjust them to. The lock nut's on. I'm going to hold it in place the best I can to make sure it doesn't move. Look one more time, make sure I'm still at the top dead center mark. Those tightened. Now what I'm going to do is just give it a rotation just to see if everything moves the way it should. Compression there, I'll push this down to decompress. Cool. Before that gets any more dirty, I'm going to go ahead and put the bonnet cover back on. Like I said, I don't have a new gasket. This won't be too bad to replace. If it does leak, I fully expect it to leak. There's no specific mention in the manual about torques on these, except that this size bolt in the Yanmar manual says generally between 5 and 7 pounds for these bolts. I thought it was a little more than that, but I'm going to go on the high end and tighten it down. It's going to be putting that cover back on. Tell you what I'll do, since I can look at it a little bit better. I'll put the injection pump back on. You can see what I'm talking about now, how that moves. This part of the injection pump to increase and decrease flow, or to completely cut it off. I'm going to rotate this so the camshaft is in a non-fuel pumping position so that a little plunger can go in there easier. Spacers are very critical. I'm actually going to clean these off good. These are pretty flimsy, so what I usually do, set this, and that's what that little inspection hole is for, so you can kind of see it and make sure that as you're putting it in, it goes into the fork as it should, and then you can move it. You're not going to be able to see it right now. I can show it later in the video, but you can see it moving the piece on the pump back and forth. I'm going to put this assembly back together. The old one I marked, most upper one. So put that hook on, and then this, and then the long bolt is the one that goes through where the lever pivot's on. I don't think torque is too critical on those. I'll look in there and make sure as you move it over, it turns up that fuel pump to full throttle. Stop, takes all of it off so it shuts down. Okay, it's time to put the crankcase cover back on. Cleaned up all the surfaces on everything. I laid out all the bolts, put some oil on them. That 8.7 is the foot-pounds torque for all the outside, and then the larger stiffener bolt, 16.6. There's an order that doesn't really show all the bolts, but I took a Sharpie, and as you can see, I marked on there 1 through 8, and that's the way you tighten them up. Got the gasket right there. I got my torque wrench set, and I got the screwdriver, the 10mm to start them, so wish me luck. I did put a whole bunch of grease on the shaft again. I positioned the motor near the edge so it wouldn't interfere trying to slide this in. What I'm using is this little pick to move the little oil pump slinger gear to match up with the camshaft gear, because that's how it looks like it turns. Okay, what's holding me up right now is the balancer shaft. I'm going to see if I can use the pick like I did with the gear and pop it into place on the crankcase cover where it's supposed to go. I'm going to check why I can still see a little bit. I can see that the oil pump is turning the way it should, as well as the balancer shaft. Now I'll follow my numbers here. Alright, so now that I got all the numbered ones, the ones that aren't numbered, I'm going to start going clockwise around. and just tighten those ones down from number 1. Actually, forgot to tighten down the stiffener bolt. All right, my phone overheated, so I didn't record putting some of this stuff back together. I got the new pull start and stuff on. Primed the fuel system. The issue I ran into after getting it halfway together is it seemed like, well, there was no compression. What it was is, I guess when I tightened it down, the nuts on the valve adjustments, it made them move a little bit, so the valve was being held slightly open with no compression. But primed it, it's all back together, got the pull start on, got fuel going to it, so I'm going to try to start it, and hopefully nothing explodes or anything like that. So alright, so what I did was took the recoil start assembly back off and put the drill on there to prime it some more. I didn't think about it, but it actually still may not start, but there's going to be a bunch of air that got trapped in here from there we go. Come on, come on. Works, I hit the kill switch, so that's kind of what I wanted to test. Alright, so I adjusted the valves again, because with it sputtering and barely going and having the extra fuel come out, I thought maybe it was out of adjustment, not allowing enough air or something in. So hopefully that was the trick. All right, so I need to tweak the valves. I did get it running a little better. I wasn't recording, my phone died. But I'm gonna wrap up. I know it's gonna run. The repair works. So I'm just gonna reassemble it into the frame so it's a lot easier to use, and I could do the electric start and tweak in those valves and it should be good.